Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode on Quality Unfiltered. I'm Parveen.
And hiya, I'm Suman Bala. Quality Unfiltered is all about real stories, our experiences, challenges, reflections coming from our work, and everything around quality and leadership roles.
So today we are going to talk about the art of feedback and we will dive into how giving and receiving feedback shapes our personal and professional growth.
And I feel feedback is our mirror to blind spots. We can't see what others can, identify in us, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't give us much room for improvement until we don't receive feedback. When people receive feedback, they're more engaged and productive. But at the same time, when the feedback is missing or feedback is poorly delivered, people feel disengaged. So, Praveen, I would like to ask what's the difference between feedback that motivates and feedback that demotivates?
Yeah, so feedback, as you said, it's a mirror, right? So feedback is like a gift for anyone. It's not just about validation as well, right? It gives us that boost, that motivation that we you can add more value. So I just feel like if anyone is coming to you and giving you some timely feedback with more examples and giving you a constructive feedback, that if I'm the one who's receiving that feedback, that will really motivate me. That will motivate me doing even more because that gives me an example of okay, the person who's giving me that feedback has listened, has seen the work, has valued what contribution has been made, right? So that to me would be more of like feedback that motivates me, and the feedback that doesn't motivate me is more of like maybe someone is coming to me and or even like coming to me and giving me feedback maybe just like as a like as a part of the process. Oh, so you're going through this end of year review or mid-year review, so I need to provide a feedback. It's not timely, it's very vague, something like, oh, you've been great at XYZ. That doesn't give any value. That doesn't show, that doesn't motivate you, that doesn't spark you, right? It's like, okay, someone is telling you, still it's good that someone is taking that time to write that message, to give you, taking that step forward to give you feedback. It's still good, but it's not as impactful as that it motivates you to do more.
Yeah,
So
because
what's your thoughts?
I think you've hit the spot on where you said construct like timely feedback really important. And I think when it's constructive feedback, then it's very important to give that on time. Because if someone comes to me and says, you did these things good, but maybe if you tweak it in a certain way, then it will have a more impact. I'm hungry for feedback, any feedback when it is, especially when it's something which I can improve on, that has a more value to me. Just someone saying, yeah, you did a good job, but good job in what? Because definition of good varies from person to person. For one person, I might have done outstanding and good job. But for another person, they might see a loss of room in improvement. And people who take time to provide constructive feedback, and when they deliver that feedback in a way where it shows, yes, they want me to improve rather than putting me down,
Yeah.
first of all, before I reflect on feedback, I always feel thank you, thanks for that particular person, because it's easy to say, oh, yeah, Praveen, you did a good job,
Yeah.
but coming with something improvement,
Yeah.
when you don't know the person on the receiving end how they are going to
Mm.
like react to that feedback is challenging. I've been at places where I want to give people some feedback for improvement, and I was like, should I not, should I not, in that
Yeah.
pendulum. But then if I'm not giving that constructive feedback to a person, just thinking they might not react in a positive way, or they might, get defensive,
Yeah.
I'm not doing any good to them.
Absolutely. I totally agree that you should never think about if you're looking to provide some feedback where you see that you really want someone like you know the someone's potential because you've seen them doing some great work and now you see that oh why they are not doing what they were doing. So if you want to give that feedback to them, some constructive feedback, you shouldn't stop yourself thinking that they might get defensive or thinking that you might not know, or in a situation where you might not know that person very well, but you have seen their work, but you still want to provide some feedback because you have seen their great work.
Do you have any framework you use when providing feedback?
Yes, I mean, it could be a framework, but mostly I start with, um, as you say, right? Always start with positive note. Okay.
Yeah.
So I always first I ask them, I really want to provide you some feedback. If it is a good feedback, I always give them. Okay. If it
Yeah.
is something that, it's like not negative, but something that I want them to improve,
Yeah.
or I know their potential that they can improve, then I really ask them. So, for let me give you an example. If one of my team member has given a presentation or a workshop on quality engineering, for example, and some topic, for example, right? And I was attending that as part of the team, and I see that they have done brilliant job, but that could be even more impactful if
Yeah.
some more improvements have been made. So I always go to them straight after that in timely way to say like, you have done a great job.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the starting. And then I'll say, okay, I would love to give you more feedback that will help. So are
Yeah.
you willing to listen to that? So I'll ask them, because sometimes it's depending on whom you're talking to, right? It's good, like, I always ask them, and then I provide them and ask them whether they want to hear this feedback in person, or whether they want to whether they want to receive this feedback as a message in a Teams
Yeah.
message or a Slack message. So I ask them how do they want to receive that, so that I prepare their mindset, so that it's not something like suddenly I just bombard them, right?
Okay. For me, it's slightly different. Let's say if it's a positive, feedback, I will give them in public, maybe like, public Teams channels, or
Mm,
where there are other, maybe they, or maybe, send it to their line manager as well if they
yeah,
don't report to me. But if something for the improvement, rather than doing like a text message, because people can read in their own
yeah,
mindset depending on how their way is going. If they are doing, lots of context switching, they
yeah,
might not get the gist of that constructive
yes,
feedback.
yeah.
So when I'm providing constructive feedback, I always prefer to do either in person or via video call, so I can explain. And I will start with positive note. You did these
Yes.
things. I really liked it. But there's a room in improvement for this. If we change it slightly, or if we add or remove certain things, it can have a more impact on the audience.
Yeah.
But I don't give constructive feedback via text message, because what happened once, someone gave me a constructive feedback and it was via text message. And I couldn't understand why this
Mm.
person's coming through and why they're saying certain things. But when they explained that to me, I could relate. And I was like, thank you. Now it makes sense. And now I can go
Mm.
and do certain improvement.
Yeah. I think when you send that message out, people might read between the lines and they might misunderstand, they might not understand, right? Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah. And I think even when I'm providing the feedback, as I said, right, it's more giving, if you give them proper, clear context, this is exactly why it is important to give timely, because they are already in the context, so they'll understand better. So this
Yeah.
is this is the exact reason why I think it should be more in timely. So what do you think? Like, I know we are talking about someone who can get defensive if you're giving the feedback, and I really liked what you said about giving the positive feedback in public, praise in
Yeah.
public, and improvements in private. So, what do you think? What are the other things that comes to your mind are like kind of some of the mistakes that you make when you're giving the feedback?
When people get quite, generic, you did a good job.
Mm,
That was good. They don't provide that context. What was good? They don't say it. Like, it's quite generic.
mm,
Um, you delivered that workshop great. I liked your talk. But what did you like? What could you resonate with that? And when there's an improvement, they don't provide that context. I think along with that timely, like, not giving the timely when the context is missing for positive as well
mm,
as constructive. That's the biggest one. Another thing I can think of is when people wait. for end of year review to
Yeah.
give that constructive, like, they've been sitting on that feedback
Hmm.
for months. And by the time they're giving, it's too late. I wish, they could have given that feedback early. The individual had time to improve on. And not just individual, I think the feedback also
Hmm.
can go to that like teams as well. For example, if I'm in a team planning, I can give feedback on how we are planning the sprints or delivery. So feedback I can give on that as well. Or if I go to certain show and tell, I shouldn't wait for that feature to go live before I can give my feedback on the
Yeah.
feature improvement.
Yeah, timely again and again, right? It comes back to that you have to give timely feedback. And of course, as you said, you shouldn't wait until the end of year or mid-year performance review to provide a feedback. You should keep feedback as a continuous practice, giving and receiving. When I say
So
giving,
I would like to ask, like, we've been talking about when we give feedback,
yeah,
but let's say you've been at the receiving end. So,
yes.
what was the best or worst feedback you ever received? And when you look back at, do you think there was any truth in it?
Best and the worst feedback. Yeah, I can think of one example from some years ago when one of my colleague, like, they came to me. They came to me and they said, okay, hey, you know what? Like, they didn't even start, like, they didn't prepare me. That's another thing, right? They didn't even prepare me that they're giving feedback. They were like, oh, hey, hello, how are you? And this, like, we were generally talking, and then suddenly he just goes, like, okay, I think I just want to give you a quick feedback. Maybe I think you're too kind.
What does
And
that
I,
even mean?
yeah, and I
Was
was,
it positive?
I don't know. See, that's exactly why for me this feedback is like the best and the worst. Because I think it was so sudden. That's exactly why I think it doesn't, because you don't prepare for receiving feedback itself in first place, because it was so sudden. I was like, okay, I couldn't even reflect on, like, thinking,
Yeah.
was it positive or negative?
Or
Because I
did they
couldn't even
mean
ask
you're too
questions.
kind to just, take that work and not saying no? Like,
No, yeah.
uh, you mentioned like where you couldn't even ask question. I have been at times where someone when gave me, let's say, constructive feedback and didn't provide any context because I was in that still absorbing that feedback
Yes, yes,
and couldn't react, couldn't ask more questions.
yes,
But over the years, now when someone says you could have done something better, maybe this strategy I've created was not how I wanted.
yeah,
Now I can ask them questions. Now at that stage, I
yeah.
know how to react to that feedback so I can get most of it.
Yeah, I totally, yeah. Because I think at that point, as I said, I wasn't ready. I couldn't ask those questions. And then I kept reflecting, what does that even mean? And then I always question myself, thinking that, oh, they said this. What did I do wrong? Self-questioning and reflecting. But this also shows that it doesn't mean that always first thing is, like, as you said, you always can go back, reflect on it. If it is very sudden, reflect on it, go back and ask questions. Okay, you have given me this feedback. Can you expand that bit more further?
Yeah.
If it was given to me now, I would definitely go back and ask them, right? Like, okay, did you mean this in a positive way or in a negative way? Or what was it? Can you give me an example where I was kind and it was not useful? Or I was kind and it was useful. So can you
Yeah.
elaborate that and give me example? Because I would like to understand what does that mean. And now that gives me, because later on, like in that example, it was more to say, like, I used to always say yes to everything, overload
Yeah.
work on me. So that was why that was a feedback that was given. But I didn't ask those questions straight away at that point. But now if someone gives me such feedback, I would definitely ask question. It doesn't have to be straight away. And also, not every feedback, like, you don't have to, you can listen to the feedback that people are
Yeah.
giving. You don't have to always, like, work on, like, you shouldn't take it as, like, oh, I got this feedback, so I have to work on this feedback.
Yeah.
It's not something like that. It's like you need to understand where the giving person is coming from. Why are they giving this feedback? Is that even something that aligns to what you're trying to work on and you need to improve? Or it's not, it doesn't have to be taken always.
And also sometimes we know individuals' intentions, right? We know when this person is giving a feedback they really want us to improve on. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've been in positions where someone was constantly picking on them of my peers and giving
Mm,
not constructed, but a, in a negative way, in a
mm,
negative tone, delivered very where let's say there were five members in leadership team and there was just one individual who was always picking on my work no matter
mm,
what. Maybe I was younger than them, but I had the same role on the table that made
mm.
them bit insecure. That's
Yeah.
what everyone could feel in the room. There was a time when I would come out from meeting and I was feeling completely drained. But then I got to a point where I decided to put that invisible wall. And if
Mm.
people say, "Oh, is it not disturbing you anyone?" I was like, "I've got thick skin." Yeah, like I think you need to sometimes have those boundaries where,
Yeah.
yes, people can give all the feedback they want,
Yeah.
but if you know individual's intention, then
Yeah.
you know whether you need to act on it or not.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, not acting on that feedback was me acting on that feedback.
Yeah, yeah, you were actually acting on the feedback, right? It's not like you were
Yeah,
not. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's totally up to you of how you want to act on that feedback because you kind of understand the intentions of the giver of the feedback, right? Now that we're talking about that, what do you think? Like, in my opinion, I feel like when you giving or receiving the feedback, it's like you just have to have that
yeah,
trust relationship, and the you need to feel that your doors have to be open, for example,
yeah,
right? You need to both sides. You need to feel psychologically safe to be
yeah,
able to be open and honest and share why and what you're sharing, right? If
yeah,
it is, especially if it is something that you are giving as an improvement feedback. I mean, if it's a positive one, there's no, like, it can be very open one. You can give it to anyone. But
yeah,
if it is like something that you want someone to improve, then it takes certain things like trust, as I said, you need to feel psychologically safe. You need to feel like, someone is going to hear you, listen to you, especially if you're giving that feedback, right? Are there any other things that you think of that are important for someone, like, whether it's giving or receiving?
like I'm hungry for feedback,
Mm,
and when I see something good, I shout out about that. When I see something
yeah,
we can improve, I talk about that openly as well if it's within the team. You build that trust, and trust could be due to maybe like how you collaborate with individuals, how you collaborate and communicate with your team. And if it's the feedback within your line reports, it comes to your line management experience and again the relationship between
yeah,
them. I've been at both stages where, and I do show them that I'm here to help. If I'm giving them positive feedback, that is also for their career growth so they can step more.
yeah,
But if it's constructive feedback, then also it's for their career growth.
yeah,
And I had similar relationship with my line managers. Maybe I was just lucky enough. I always had, good line managers. Uh, and they could tell me the way they nurtured that relationship. I have, passed the
mm,
same love to my line reports. I've nurtured
yeah,
that relationship, and they do feel quite comfortable. Uh,
yeah,
I've been at places where the relationship was so good, my line reports could give that feedback to me in our one-to-ones. And that
yeah,
shows that you need to build that trust. You need to have empathy with the
yeah,
individual too, so they can feel comfortable.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's again it says that, right? There's this phrase, right? Walk the talk. You just don't have to say that, oh, I'm always open to feedback, but you need to show that if someone is giving you feedback, you need to show that you're listening in first without becoming defensive or reacting to it. So that will show that, okay, then that person can come back again. That will create that value of like, oh, will this person come back again to give the same feedback, right? So this also reminds me, like, you don't have to always wait for someone to give you feedback.
Yeah.
You should always ask for feedback. You be intentional in asking for feedback as well.
Yeah.
And like when and don't just like how feedbacks can be given vaguely, don't be vague in asking for feedback. Ask specific questions of where and what and why you're looking for feedback and in timely way.
And I feel people feel when it's feedback, I can only give to my juniors,
Yeah,
right? Or my peers or people who report to me. But, we talk about 360-degree feedback and all.
yeah,
I think it's so important for people to understand that you can give feedback to your higher up as well.
yes,
Don't feel there would be like, some politics and maybe my manager or a head of or director of that department won't support me anymore. Because if they are not open to feedback, they don't have that growth mindset. Have you ever been in a position where you gave feedback to higher up?
yeah. I think I agree with that. Feedback is for everyone.
Yeah.
So regardless of which level, which position, or like, higher up. So I do like it's it's a difficult one, but I think it is an important one. Like you do have
Yeah.
to provide that feedback. For example, you depending on what your company structure is, you might be working with your higher up roles. They
Yeah.
might not be your direct line manager, but they might be something you are collaborating with. So when you are working on something and you did come across something that you had to provide that feedback, as simple as saying that, oh, I did not even understand your requirements in first place, for
Yeah.
example, right? Like of course saying it in a
It-
in a different way, but it's important. I think I have been there, like I do provide this feedback, but you don't have to say that, oh, I'm providing this feedback, so this is what it means. You can
yeah.
always straight away give, right? Because I don't think that you shouldn't be giving feedback or you shouldn't be sharing what you feel. Like it doesn't have to be like improvement or anything like that. It should be something like, oh, you observed this, you
Yeah.
think your collaboration could have been even more better if you had that specific. In my example, as I said, oh, the requirements wasn't clear, so I can always give that example and say why I'm saying this, right? So that
Yeah.
they understand. Like it's like you're not just throwing something, but you're just saying like, oh, you should have been more clear in giving these requirements before I had started off this initiative.
And
uh,
that's the difference between constructive and negative. The
yeah.
tone matters.
Yeah, yeah. So as you said, like yes, I have been there. Like I do give this kind of feedback regardless of what level or which role they are in. So how do you have any examples?
I have an example where I've given feedback to my managers. It
Mhm.
could be they supported me in certain way, and I would, like give that positive feedback. Or let's assume if there's someone who's in C level, but they
Yeah.
are now coming to the teams in the retros
Mm-hmm.
and it's impacting, then I might go and give a feedback to them. It would be better if they don't come to the retros. Yes, they want to see, but it's not making team comfortable. So retro should be a space
Mm.
for the team. So that can be a feedback too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it applies to them as well. Like, how do they react? Do they listen in? Because if you are on that level and if you are creating those values in the company that everyone should be providing and listening to the feedback, then I just feel like they have to show that as an example as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think now that we are covering a lot of things around feedback, and it's a time where a lot of companies might be doing like between now and January, depending on different companies' time scales. So we do lot end of year performance reviews might be happening right now.
Yeah.
So maybe before we wrap up, is there something that you want to touch upon before we?
So as a manager during your one-to-one, make a note. I did that when I was doing the
Mhm.
end reports with every individual. I will have the things we discussed, things I give them for improvement, positive any things they get. And on the other side, if you are the one who's submitting, you maintain that constant note of things you're doing. Discuss that feedback in regular one-to-ones. Don't wait for end of year review or mid
Mhm.
of year review because I won't remember the good thing I did in January or February
Yeah.
by December. So keep a track. It
Yes.
could be in, like notes or any, or maybe a Miro board, however you want to maintain. And don't wait for your manager to gather feedback from individuals. Go
Yeah.
and gather feedback from your peers, other team you might be collaborating with, or any communities you might be attending, because your
Yeah.
manager might not know all that, or they might not be able to keep a track, depending on how
Yeah.
many line reports they're managing. I know I've seen an individual who was managing like 20
Yeah.
line reports. It's
Yeah.
too much, right?
Yeah.
Doing
Yeah. Yeah.
20 reviews, end of reviews.
Yes.
So maintain that and
Yes.
provide that document. So when you go to that end of a review,
Yeah.
provide that your reflection and share that document to your manager a couple of days in advance, if not
Yeah.
a week at least, so that they can read through the document when they come to
Mhm.
this. It's not surprising,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
importantly, don't wait for your manager to gather
Yes.
that feedback.
Yeah. That's a good
What
message.
tips would you like to give?
Yeah, for me, it's same. Don't wait until the end of your performance or mid-year performance. Plus, keep a tab, like just exactly how you said, keep a tab of your log of all your wins, your impact, the values that you've given, and maybe
And things you have improved,
yeah,
right?
anything like, anything that you have come along. Like, as I said, like the managers, they might remember, they might have their own set of notes that they're taking and then keeping a tab of it. But you should own your goals and objectives, and you should own your performance review. And I have my own brag document. I use that, I call it as a brag document. I
Oh, I
use
love
that
that.
brag document. Yeah, it's a messy list of everything that I'm doing. Like, because no one remembers what you do, and someone might give you some feedback and some shout out, right?
Yeah.
I just grab a screenshot and put it there.
Same. I
Yeah.
I grab screenshot
Yeah.
and I keep them. And it
Yeah.
helps them, the days when I'm feeling like I'm not doing a good job. I go
Yeah.
and, just go through that document and I was like, yes, you can do it. You've
Yeah.
got this.
Exactly. So that's like you just maintaining a log of your stuff, and then it will help you when you're actually reflecting on your end of your performance of like to write up what was your impact and value. You can use that as an example, and that will give you some ideas of where and what has been done, and you can share that with your manager as well. So it's more about how you own it, and don't wait for, just like how you don't have to wait for feedback. Just don't wait for your manager to provide you feedback. Ask for
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
Ask feedback regularly, whether it's about your goals, whether about if it's something that you are looking for improvement, or if you think you need some more mentorship or more opportunities. Ask for it. Until unless you ask for it, no one will know. So these are some of the things I would definitely say, like from the receiving end, and from the as a manager, you will also have your own reviews, right? The same thing
Yeah.
applies for you as well. And as a manager, I feel like you just have to support your reportee, show your support, and as you said about praising in public, right? Support and praise in public.
Yeah.
Same thing applies. And your end of your performance review shouldn't be very surprising of what rating or what an outcome you're trying to provide, because your regular sessions, your regular catch-ups, right?
Yeah.
That should give some indication.
Mm-hmm.
So as a manager, I would feel like, yeah, that's you just have to be keep those conversations that transparent, and as a reporter, you have to keep a tab of your own stuff. So I think that was a really good conversation. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to us. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please do share and don't forget to subscribe.
And before we wrap up, I would like to ask the listeners, how do you provide feedback or gather feedback for yourself and your line reports? Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, keep it unfiltered. Thanks again for listening to Quality Unfiltered. Cheers. Bye for now.